All right. If you're just joining us, this is the Creative Finance Collective. This is uh, a time and space where we, as attorneys in the creative finance space, get together to talk about all things creative finance. And for you, the listener, if you're just joining us, we're taking questions for the hour. So this is your opportunity to ask away, uh, uh, inquire with lawyers from a variety of different states and jurisdictions on creative finance, and we got somebody from Alabama guys watching, so they're participating. We don't have any Alabama lawyers here, so no paid legal advice or anything, but we're happy to answer any questions. Tonight we've got Sean's here, Scott Horne out of Texas is here. Jeff Watson is here in some metaphysical way, not in a perfect way. He's still working through his audio and visual, but hopefully he'll be able to join us. How's everything going, Scott? Long time no see. We just saw you yesterday. How you been?
What am I doing here again?
Well, we guilted you into it.
You did actually, Just FYI, I keep waiting for the check to arrive or something, but when we're down there in Phoenix, we're gonna get wined and dined to the nth degree, I know.
That you have our promise with that. We will wine and
Yeah,
dine
you guys are
you
going to
to
be
your
here the
heart's
end of the month,
content.
right? The
Or
end of
we can go.
October.
Yeah, that's what my boss says we're gonna do. So yes, I just follow along on the leash like I'm a good little soldier.
How long will you be here?
Either 3 or 4 days.
Oh, okay.
We're supposedly meeting with some escrow officers, a few other things of that nature, possible office space, yada, yada.
Good.
A little gambling. Unfortunately, no golf. Maybe golf. I don't know. Most likely not.
It's hot still. It's hot
Now,
still. Even in October,
Well,
it'll be warm.
cool it off a little bit, would you please?
I it's hot compared to Wisconsin, but if you've been here all summer, it feels
Yeah.
considerably cooler.
Yeah, it's 15 degrees cooler today than it was 3 weeks ago. And I'm sorry, that makes a difference. It used to be you walk out the front door, I mean, it just slapped you up across the side of the head. And today you don't get that. So there is a difference.
Yeah, and I wonder, you could tell us if Texas is like this, but in the dead of it, it's not so much that the days are hot. You expect that, that's hot. You've got AC, but you get no relief here in the evenings or the mornings. It's still, and during the worst of it is still over 100 degrees in the coolest part of the night, and that's where it really kinda, kicks you when you're down, it feels
It
like.
does. It was that way here for a while as well. And luckily that has drastically changed and we're a little bit cooler here today in the evenings than, down to the mid 80s, which is again, still too much, but I'll take it over anything else. So all good. And of course, you guys didn't guilt me into this, but my partner guilted me into this. It's like, you promised. And it's like, I was going to go to the gym. I was going to do this. I got 8711 emails to look at, but you guys are more important.
Well, that's awfully nice of you, and for the listeners out there, if you don't have questions for Scott after all of that, then we can't help you.
I will share something with you guys. You'll notice I'm not in my tie anymore. Thank goodness. I don't even wear ties to church anymore. That's what I look at. It's like I used to always go in ties. Oftentimes I don't wear a sport coat anymore. Anyway. So I think as we're talking about the collective here and all the things we do, I was in court yesterday, which I don't do a lot of, but I'll share a story with everybody because it relates to what we do and what we go through as lawyers and as investors. So had a gentleman who's actually in Afghanistan and has been there for three and a half years. sell us. He wanted to retain me to do a foreclosure a year ago, actually more than a year ago, year and a half ago now. But he didn't want to pay the retainer. And it's like, okay. 6 months goes by. He calls again, wants us to do it. Again, whatever reason, doesn't want to pay the retainer. And in March of this year, there was a wrap loan on this house, and the borrower was supposed to have paid off this mortgage in November of 21, November of 21 or 22, I think 21. It was supposed to be like a 2-year mortgage, and then he was going to refinance and pay it off. Well, he didn't. He files bankruptcy for some reason. That runs for a while. And then on March the 6th, which is the day before our first Tuesday here in Texas for foreclosures, he files bankruptcy again so that the underlying mortgage company is stopped from foreclosing. And we all get that. And he's just trying to buy time. We get the phone call again, but this time it's like, is there anything you can do to help and pay off the mortgage in some format and solve this problem? And I get the chance to buy this wraparound mortgage for $0. It's like, okay. And so the guy's in open bankruptcy. We buy the mortgage. We call in our BK boys. We go file a motion to lift stay. And of course, it was a no-brainer to get it done. Go to file for the foreclosure. And of course, the day before foreclosure, what does this Yahoo do? Goes down and files a TRO claiming he's got a contract to sell the house for $50,000 more than it's worth. Well, we pick up the phone, we call the title company. Guess what? They can't find the contract. They also have no earnest money. Well, an hour later, lo and behold, the contract shows up. They found it somewhere. And you just go, yeah, right. We know what's going on. So we put together a Rule 11 agreement, which for those listening is just an agreement for the parties to agree to do something. And the guy doesn't do anything. So we foreclose in August of this year. And we go down and file our eviction. And the day before the eviction hearing, he goes to district court and files another TRO. Now, I'm not sure about Georgia or Arizona, but in Texas, our justice courts have exclusive jurisdiction. So you can't do that. And of course, the district court dismissed it for want of jurisdiction. He then goes to county court, does it again. Yeah, they did the same thing. Well, I gave him the courtesy of that, let it go, refile the eviction again, go to court, long drawn out, bloody eviction hearing, and we win it pretty easily. And so he then goes and he files his appeal. So here in Texas, from the JP court, you can appeal trial de novo to our county court, and you start over again. But to do that, you got to post your bond. Well, he claims he has no enough money to pay the bond. So he files what's called a pauper's affidavit. I'm not sure if it's the same thing in y'all states, or an inability to pay affidavit, whatever it might be in that regard. And I look at this and go, yeah, baloney, dude. And so, of course, he doesn't realize we have access to his 22 bankruptcy filing financials and his 23 bankruptcy financials and his affidavit financials. And we go there, and that's where we were yesterday. And I mean, just flat out lies on his affidavit, putting things that just aren't in there. And it's just the things that investors have to contend with. So, if you're in our game, in our industry, if you're not a lawyer, you're hiring a lawyer to do this most of the time. So you got to be prepared and have the money to do that. You can't just do this business and go, oh, it's going to work out great every time. It doesn't. And then you get into these litigious tenants like this guy is, who he wants to go down and feed the homeless, which is very magnanimous. Has all of these nonprofits he set up to mentor, disturbed youth and all this kind of stuff. And it sounds great, but it's like, what kind of an example are you, dude? You haven't paid your mortgage payment in 3.5 damn years. You screwed the guy in Afghanistan. What are you teaching these kids you're mentoring? How to play this game? Anyway. By the way, it took me all day yesterday just to kind of calm down and come off the cliff a little bit. But and I'm sure all of y'all have been there a little bit along the way.
Well,
But it was just all this bleeding heart crap in court. But as an investor, investors have to understand when you get into our creative finance space, and you're going to play this game, things do happen. It's not just mailbox money that rolls in every month. You got to actually stay on top of it. And this kind of junk happens. And then you come across that occasional litigious tenant who tries to find every avenue that's out there to try to delay issues so he can continue living for free longer and longer. And I kind of had a chuckle because the same fella texted me this afternoon. This is notice that I'm filing a TRO immediately. And it was just like, yeah, good luck, go for it. The court has spoken, anyway. It's just the stuff you got to be willing to deal with. And I think so many investors, they don't realize that. And they don't have the resources that when this happens, they throw their hands up and they're lost sometimes. So just for anyone who's out there listening and you play these games, you got to expect and anticipate things to happen. You have to know who to go to the right time, wherever you might be, and have the resources so you can move quickly because time is money. And you can't just let people walk all over you because they will. And in my entire career, I've only dealt with probably 3, maybe 4 people who are litigious like this. Most people just walk away. I get it. But you never know. And so for the investor community, at least, because we lawyers understand this, you got to have the resources. You got to know what to do and how to handle it. If you don't know, learn it. Go talk to good lawyers someplace who can walk you through this stuff. Be prepared to do it. Be proactive and have those go-to resources, because otherwise it's going to be a problem, I think, along the way.
yeah, you for sure have to plan for that. And I like the point, which is one we've discussed in the past, which is we had a guest on the show one time. I think it was Michael Gross out of Maryland. He said we were talking about the ability to basically willy-nilly record things in county recorder's office and file things. And he's like, look, for the common folk that aren't used to this, there is no traffic cop at the courthouse steps or at the recorder's office checking to see what you filed. They can go file just about anything in just about any court. And sure, is there a process that's going to vet through that after the fact? Yeah, but it's and this problem isn't just a problem for pro pers either, or unrepresented people. Sometimes lawyers, I had you to bring up the trustee sale or foreclosure process. I've served and still do act as trustee on trustee sales. And I have been hauled into court in the wrong venues as the trustee by lawyers who are trying to stop a trustee sale. The last one was being brought into probate court. They brought a TRO, and a state did in a state. The homeowner was deceased and claimed that we didn't serve them properly, which we had. But they brought us into the probate venue, and not only did it take some time to educate the other side on the process and why we weren't even in the right venue, and this wasn't the correct process to do this, and this is how you go about doing this. But you have to educate the judge in those cases that in a particular venue, there's a process to that. They might, in this case, this one judge wasn't convinced and set it for an evidentiary hearing. And before long, I was a witness as the trustee in an evidentiary hearing, and eventually we prevailed. And we got to the point of basically telling them, hey, you've got this deed of trust out here. You can actually just reinstate this. I can't stop you from reinstating. You want to stop this trustee sale? You could just bring all this stuff due current and you could end this tomorrow. And they were like, oh, really? We can do that? I'm like, yeah, you could do that right now. I can't stop you. And the point in all of that was a very simple trustee sale. Really shouldn't have cost the client a whole heck of a lot of money, but because a lot of people got aggressive, went to different courts, or were wanting to try a lot of different stuff, it got very expensive very quick.
hate to keep taking the conversation here, Andy, but I had this young lawyer. I think she was out of law school a couple of years here in Dallas, and she's a dog bite specialist. Maybe she needs to go call, the White House and talk to them a little bit about the dog bite specialist, represent them somehow. I didn't say that, but I'm getting served in a lawsuit, and sued. I'm going, and I look it up online. I find it, and it's like, well, you're the trustee, and you have all this knowledge. It's like, honey, I'm the trustee on the deed of trust for this property. I'm not the borrower, or the property owner, or anything else. I'm not part of the land trust. I'm just and she didn't know the difference.
Yeah.
So like you said, but at least I was able to educate her enough. And it's like, go ahead. You want to sue me and serve me? I got to file an answer. Yeah. You're paying our attorney's fees. You're going to do this. You're going to do that. She was smart enough that she listened, did a little research, called somebody, took care of it. And, those kind of things happen. But listen to this one, guys. And by the way, what I'm fixing to describe is kind of on me a little bit also. I hate to admit that. Every once in a while, we title guys, you miss something. It's just the nature of the business, I wish I could say we were just perfect, but we're not. And years ago, a lady comes in and she wants to borrow some money. So, Jeff, we also are hard money lenders here in the Texas marketplace as well. I've done it for a long time. And so I'm pretty good at researching things online, and she's on the CAD, and she's been on the CAD for 15 years. We could go back that far and see all this stuff. I go online, check everything, no mortgage loans, no liens, no nothing. And I find the deed back in 2008 from husband to wife. And I stopped right there. As I later learned, 2 years later, I didn't check the husband going back 8 years previously to 2000, where he bought the house under a contract for deed, which was in Texas okay at that time. He was married to his wife then, but only he was on the contract for deed. And they lived in this house for 8 years together. Then he runs off to Guatemala with his hoochie mama or whatever was going on. I don't know. And deeds the house over to him. We use highfalutin words around here in Texas, guys. Not sure about y'all out in Arizona or Georgia.
It's very upper brow.
It is, we're a classy bunch. The shoe fits, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, down the road, she defaults, and I start going to a foreclosure mode. She comes in the office. Now she tells us, oh, there's a lawsuit going on. I'm going, what lawsuit? And this and that. And I get the name of some lawyer because when she had in 2000, I don't know what the date was anymore. It was 2016. She had to go to Guatemala to take care of her mother who was passing away. And she was going to be gone for 3 to 6 months, however long it takes there to do that and get the affairs together. And the same people they had bought the house from in 2000 asked if they could lease the house back. Okay. The only problem is there's no paperwork. And instead of staying for 3 to 6 months, she stays for 3 years. And she lets these tenants pay the mortgage company direct, which just happened to be their mortgage. And so eventually the original seller of the property, they file suit for declaratory judgment claiming they own the property. Now in Texas, if there's a contract for deed, you have to foreclose the interest. You can't just terminate it. They never did that. Then this lady, her lawyer got suspended for 3 months. And in this 3 months period, they got a default judgment against her. And you're just going, you got to be kidding me. When the guy got readmitted, whatever it was he was going on, he did file an appeal, and apparently that got worked out. They went back to court. But In the meantime, I'm getting ready to foreclose on this property. And of course, I'm rolling the dice a little bit, guys, because I may or may not have a valid lien interest. I don't know, because of a few things that were going on. But then I get this phone call out of the blue. And it's from a lawyer who's filing a TRO against me. It's like, what? And I know that this lady who I had lent the money to, she's got no money to hire a lawyer. And of course, it winds up that this lawyer was being paid by another investor. And then I find out this investor had actually bought this house from this lady 4 or 5 months previously. Never contacted us as the lender, never paid us or anything. And it's like, okay. And then he calls and it's like, I just want to buy your note. And it's like, great. Disclose this lawsuit to him, disclose everything to him. I sign it on down the line. What they do, I have no idea. Don't know this guy from Adam, never met anybody. Done. Get sued 2 years later, claiming all this conspiracy stuff and whatnot, and just such a bogus crock of what. But this is the stuff sometimes you experience out there. I know in this instance, I had made the mistake on the title issue, but you go, holy cow, but wrong venues, wrong situations, wrong things. And in the investor world, sometimes you got to be one to step up and handle this kind of stuff. But all types of things like you're talking about, Andy, can happen out there. And we lawyers understand that. The question is, do the investors out there know that?
Yeah, and if you're in the, we haven't been talking specifically about the creative finance space, but if you're we talk a lot all the time about the transactional aspects of creative finance, but there's risk out there to these kind of, there's risk in every real estate, every transaction. It doesn't matter, real estate, whatever the transaction, there is inherent risk whenever you sign a document or engage in some sort of commercial or regular transaction with another person. And creative finance is not an exception to that. In fact, there's probably additional risks to the common one. Are there particular lawsuits or types of litigation you guys are seeing popping up right now relating to creative finance?
Usury. We've already talked about that weeks ago, I think.
Yeah, kind of like being unconscionable or.
Oh, $30,000 fees for 3 weeks on $140,000. So you don't have that in Arizona, I think, as Sean pointed out a month or so ago.
Right.
But I haven't seen usury in Texas in years and years and years and years and years and years. I haven't even thought about it. And I mean, in the last 90 days, I've seen it come across my desk 6 times. And we went through this. It's the people who are buying homes and they're borrowing second liens, and the people are charging these exorbitant fees for short-term money. And it's absolutely incredulous in what they're doing. I mean, 120% interest rates. And you go back to the old adage, it's like, guys, if it sounds too good to be true, guess what? You just can't do that. But they're doing it. They're charging these $2,500 fees for 30 days to lend $10,000 for earnest money to somebody. And it's just this enormous greed factor. So that's the first one I'm seeing here, at least in the Texas marketplace a little bit. I really haven't seen anything really pop up out of the ordinary besides things of that nature. That's just people being stupid and being greedy.
Yeah, I think the common ones that we see here might surround, non-disclosure, unconscionability. Sean, what's another one we've seen? There was another recent one I think we talked about. We were talking with one of our.
Oh,
Go ahead.
By the way, Andy, do you put Sean in the corner intentionally or what?
Yes.
we're in separate offices, actually.
Really? All your offices have this funky design on the walls?
Yeah.
Not all.
No, we offices that, well, we have one built out like, no, but Andy's in like our courtroom setup, and podcast room, which, all the court hearings now, for the most part, oral arguments and stuff are all telephonic. So we have like a podium, everything in there, so you can, have an argument and look, you're actually being an attorney instead of just sitting around, chatting at an oral argument. And then this office is kind of the overflow for, like, I don't know, settlement conferences or mediations or meetings or whatnot that are done by video, just because the other room was getting used so much. So we put this one together to do that. But so claims that we've been seeing recently, lack of consideration, unconscionability, misrepresentation. I don't. They all seem fairly weak and just something to kind of try to get your foot in the door. But I mean, at the end of the day, the seller is, signing initially, in all the different places. Oh, they didn't understand the concept. They didn't know what they were, these different pretty big.
You're cutting out some, Sean. So I think I mean, we're seeing mostly just lawyers arguing unconscionability, and I don't think you see the disclosure stuff come up as much, because contracts have gotten a lot better at the disclosure piece of it. I know, Jeff, you don't spend as much, you don't do litigation or try to stay away from it when you can. Are there particular areas you're seeing creative finance deals or have seen challenged in your area?
Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Yay! Okay. There's two things that have come across my radar in the last 60 days. There was a case that y'all referred to me. It was a seller finance deal, very poorly papered up. One investor selling to another investor, and it was just a complete mess. And then the end user investor stopped making payments, and there was no mortgage. So it's just a mess. The second thing that I'm seeing, and it made the news again yesterday. I've been aware of this case for about 2.5 years. There's a doctor in Cleveland, Ohio, that just got popped by the SEC for running an $11 million Ponzi scheme, where he had a total of, I think, about $2 million in mortgages, all purportedly in first lien position, on a $47,000 house. And he was using photocopies of a previously signed and notarized document. He'd take the last page of it, put it on the mortgage, and send it to people. He'd never record them, but that's what he was sending to people. And so what I'm seeing is the typical sophisticated theft. I think we've got, in Northeast Ohio, we've got 3 large Ponzi schemes that have been popped in the last year. And then we also just see people that are, pardon me for saying this, I don't want to sound too hoity-toity, but people who are just too cheap, too miserly, and too much in a hurry, and too visions of money in their own pocket to pay for good counsel on how do I paper up this deal. And they don't do their due diligence. They don't hire somebody to help them figure out what they're doing. And then when the wheel goes flat, they all look at each other and go, I don't know how to fix this. What do we do now? And that, and then it becomes a finger pointing blame game. And it's just a sad state of affairs.
As the preacher says, amen and amen. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We can talk about that for hours.
I had one other case a while back that it put me in a really difficult position. I own a small piece of the largest title company here in this part of Northeast Ohio. And they had closed a transaction for a former client of mine. And the title examiner missed a mortgage on the exam. The investor, former client, knew that it was there, didn't say anything. When asked in writing, pre-closing, to list any liens on the property, didn't list the lien. At closing, looked at the settlement statement, saw all the extra money coming their way, didn't say anything, took it. So the property sold to a innocent third party. And the next thing you know, 90 days later, people are starting to get like, where's our money? What's the problem? And then foreclosure starts rolling around. And I had to let this client go because they wanted to pretend that they didn't do anything wrong. And I'm in this situation of, wait a second, you're my client, but I also own a little piece of this title company. And the title company is now in a jam. And I looked at him and says, you got 30 days to make this thing right, or you're going to get sued and it's going to get ugly. Well, 3-4 months after they got sued, they finally coughed up the money, paid it off, and so on. And so that's the third thing that I see, which is it indifference? Is it arrogance? Is it, I'm just going to see if I can get away with it? I don't know. But I don't like some of the stuff I'm seeing out there.
No, it is, Jeff, it is the greed factor. It is, how much can I get away with? Will I get caught? Am I willing to roll the dice, whatever it might be? I see a lot of that. I hear a lot of that. And, I've got a transaction that's closing in my title office tomorrow, I think. I just happen to be the lender on the transaction. They're refinancing out to a permanent loan with their DSCR lender. And I'm just going, call my title officer, make sure we get an affidavit of all bills paid, executed at closing. That I don't trust the investor. I know there's issues ongoing. CYA all you can and go on from there. And I hope it all works out great and fine. But sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes people try to do this, not pay, oh, they won't file a mechanics lien. They won't do this. Yeah, it happens. And it's the same thing. And it falls into that same usury category we were talking about earlier, the greed factor. Same way, if you're people, can we get away with it, really? And it seems, I don't know if it's snowballing a little bit, because it didn't used to be that way. It's like with these wholesalers on their memorandums of contract and whatnot, just, cloud and title everywhere, trying to force people to pay money here and there. And it's like, time out, guys. It ain't hard to do deals the right way, do things right. But it seems like everybody just wants more, or whatever it might be. And I hope that's not, signs of the time or anything, but it could be.
I think it is.
Goodness
I think
gracious.
it is.
And you see more and more of it out there.
So earlier, when you were talking about the aggressive litigant tenant that was filing all the TROs, it reminded me of a case one of my clients had down in Florida. And I was doing some general advisory work for them. And they had bought this defaulted note on a property down in Florida, really good location, Palm Beach area, and so on. And this borrower was a professional deadbeat. And they literally told my client, you're going to try, I'm not going to pay. You're going to end up selling this note to somebody else like the last 3 people have done. I'm not paying. By the way, I'm not talking anymore because I'm leaving on a 2-week vacation. Goodbye. Click. Well, this particular client took it a little more aggressively. We found the right creditor's attorney down there in that area of Florida. And I finally got a chance to queue up Toby Keith. When we got the foreclosure done, we got him legally prevented from filing another BK for 1.5 years, got the foreclosure done, got him moving out, and I queued Toby Keith, which was, how do you like me now? Because you's out and we got the house.
I
thought it was going to be whiskey for my men and beer for my horses. I wasn't sure.
Well, at least
no, it's how do you like me now? Because you told me we couldn't do this, and or you told my client we couldn't do this, and my client said, we're going to get this done. And the thing of it is, there was a less than honorable attorney representing the borrower who was trying all of these sleazy foreclosure defense tactics and bankruptcy and all this other stuff. And I mean, between comparing the different bankruptcy petitions this borrower filed, it was incredible to see how quickly they were racking up debt. I mean, it was like, wow. I mean, y'all ought to run for Congress at the rate you're spending money.
I think you see a lot of that stuff out there just like that. You run across it occasionally, and but it does happen. And you got to be persistent to get those shysters out of the property.
But here's the thing that I really want to get this message across to anybody that's listening to us now or listens to this later on. Please do not, if you're the investor and you're doing things right and you run into that kind of a tenant, that kind of a borrower, that kind of a seller, that kind of a buyer, whatever it is, please do not do the ostrich maneuver. Stick your head in the sand and ignore it. Instead, put your big boy, big girl boots on, find the right people to help you, and go do battle. You've got to be tough. And I'm gonna do this, and I'm probably gonna make somebody mad. You've got to show your toughness like Ohio State did to Lou Holtz over the weekend.
Oh boy.
Was that the two JUCO teams playing out there?
Oh, wait. Y'all got a quarterback down there that was fourth string in Ohio. He's now first string for your Longhorns. Okay. That's the teams we're talking about here, okay?
Can you not look behind me and determine that I'm not a Longhorn?
It's a little blurry, Scott. I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry.
That's the bonfire and the scoreboard from A&M in Texas, where we beat them in my senior year, and a few other things of that nature. So no, I'm an Aggie.
Okay. All right. Well,
We don't play with those little tea sippers over yonder.
And young man Ewers, I hope he has a healthy, long career at the Longhorns and makes it to the NFL. But I just had to point that out. I mean, Ohio State, we've had some quarterback issues. I mean, we had Joe Burrow, we let him get away. I'm not so sure that was a great maneuver, but whatever, Anyhow, we'll get back to real estate instead of football now.
At least Ohio has a professional football team, such as Ohio State.
Oh,
If you're just now joining us as the Creative Finance Collective, and we're talking about all things football, so it's even better than usual. If you have any questions and you're watching, make sure to post them. We're happy to take them. We did kind of get a question. I don't have any details on this, but it reminded me of something you said yesterday, Scott. But the question basically, or the statement is, facing headwinds with a lender and a seller trying to do a formal assumption on a VA loan. And I remember you saying yesterday you had been talking with somebody and they were having trouble working through the system at the VA. Is that kind of the word on the street, that it's a log jam over there? What do you
No, I think it was an old client who called me whose son is buying a house, and the existing first lien is a VA, and he happens to be active military duty in the Texas National Guard here, and had wanted to attempt to go in and assume the loan. And as much as they say this loan is assumable, if you're a vet as well, great. It's assumable if you can get somebody to talk to you, if you can wait and go through the process, if you can give them all the 3 feet deep of paperwork that they want to get it done. And oftentimes by the time you do that, the house is already sold, gone, something else. And it just becomes problematic that you can't, there's just not enough time to go through it. It's like dealing with the IRS to get a lien release sometimes, or will they do an offer in compromise, or, maybe someone's selling a house because it's getting foreclosed on, there's an IRS lien, and instead of being able to pay $100,000 towards a lien, they can only pay 15. But will the IRS provide you a partial release? as to the real estate for that fund. Well, by the time you go around and get them someone there to listen to you and get that done, it's too late. You just don't have the time to make those kind of things happen. And I can't tell you, Andy, if that is actually what's going on down there or not.
Yeah.
I just think historically, I can tell you, I don't think, without going back to the old FHA non-qualifying days back in the 80s and maybe early 90s when those things kind of still existed a little bit, if I've ever seen an assumption with any lender ever. I know that now is a great time to do it, but traditional mortgage companies, yeah, that will never happen. VA, maybe, but do you have enough time to go through that, make the effort, and will somebody actually respond and help the vet go through that? Gosh, I don't know. I just think it's something you see out there all the time. It doesn't mean you can't try and it's not available. It just means it may not happen or it may take too long and you're going to lose the deal to somebody else.
All right.
Yeah. I did want to bring up one thing real quick, kind of in Jeff's scenario, talking about some things where people, when you throw their hands up, I get, when you've walked 30,000 plus houses like I've done in my career, because you see a lot of stuff. I deal with a lot of stuff in title and legal sides, but you also see the real life practical stuff out there. And, I remember one home here in Dallas that was in a pretty nice area of town. Today, that house is probably valued in the $500,000-$700,000 price range. Back then, it may have been 200,000 or so. I don't know. But we get the call to go look at the house to buy it. And we walk in and it is a hoarder house. And it's one of these houses where the papers and magazines are stacked up to the ceiling and you're winding through trails and you're going, and your mind's just going everywhere. You're listening to this guy. And then he starts talking about the lawsuits he's in, that, it's illegal to collect interest on a mortgage loan and this and that. And he's in an active lawsuit with Wells Fargo. And the case is now at the Texas Supreme Court and this and that. And you kind of go, hallelujah, brother. Good luck as you wind your way back out the front door as fast as you can. There are times you just go, yeah, no, hightail it out of there. It's not worth getting into issues, not getting into headaches, because who knows what that guy is going to do after you buy the house. Better to walk away and live another day.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Sometimes the best deal is not to do the deal.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, if you run into somebody, and I want the wholesalers, I want the rehabbers, I want the investors that are hearing this now and later, folks, do not minimize the feeling, the sense, the tingling spidey sense that you get when you're dealing with a seller or a counterparty that sets you on edge. If they're talking about all the other lawsuits that they're in, if they're talking about all the other people that have done them wrong and done them dirty, your name's going to be next on that list. Get out, go away. Yep. Oh,
Yep. You see, these guys like Sean and Andy, I'm not sure they get a chance to see that kind of stuff all the time and deal with it. I got to get out there and deal with it down and dirty, every day with these people. Occasionally I get come up to the ivory tower and play lawyer and whatnot, not too often. But man, and yeah, Jeff, I mean, that is sometimes the best advice you can get people, but they don't want to listen. And it's like, okay, move on.
yeah. Yeah.
So I'm gonna bring up a deal for you guys here because this came across my desk and I was analyzing it earlier today a little bit, and it's in the creative finance game somewhat, where the seller for whatever reason hasn't been able to sell the house. So of course I want to know why, because it's in a part of town where it should sell. So the first reason is obviously it's probably overpriced or something. We got it down to the right price and they just want out and they're willing to sell the house on basically a principal only loan on a 10-year balloon. Okay, we can do that. But you got some other fees you got to pay. You got some down payment, this and that. But as you analyze this deal, I look at it and I go, okay, if it's really worth X and they were trying to sell it for Y up here, but they haven't been able to do it, it's really worth X or less. It's not worth this up here. And then you got to turn around and go, you pay some money down, you get this loan, you get it set up. You can't sell the house retail because you would go negative automatically. And although this is a legal talk show, you got to teach these people how to run numbers occasionally. And by the time you pay this little wholesale fee, and you pay the realtor, you pay this down payment, and you pay your interest carry, you add all that up, it's worth more than the house is worth. So then you can't go and allow a potential buyer to refinance this house down the road in the first, let's say, 24 months. So you got to throw in some prepayment penalties that are reasonable, that fit the Dodd-Frank model appropriately and things of that nature along the way. But it was an interesting little play on numbers to look at where the average investor goes, oh, look at this great deal. Let's just go do it. And it's like, stop, look down the road at what can happen, because all types of things can happen. Learn how to structure the deal. Talk to guys who have been in the business like us, y'all, who can see this thing a little bit and open your eyes some, then structure it right, and then move forward if it works. But anyway, that sounded kind of interesting. It's like, it could be a great deal. It could be a bad deal. And you got to find a way to minimize the risk in between. And that's where the experience factor from, most of us guys here helps them put that deal together the right way and get it done, if they'll call us and actually listen.
But there's two things you said right at the end: if they'll call, and then if they'll listen.
Oh yeah.
Because a lot of times you get the phone call and all you hear on the other end of the line is yeah, but.
I know. I agree.
I hear 2 or 3 yeah, buts, and I'm like, you know what? I think you know more than I do. I don't think I can help you. Peace, I'm out.
Do you guys run into the situation where you're running into investors that are doing creative financing just for the sake of doing creative financing? They get all excited about the concept. And I get where I'm going with this is I've heard one of the criticisms of like the 1031 exchange, for instance, is, oh, it's this great thing, but it's also a common reason for investors to overpay for a property just to defer some capital gains. It's like they just they go in when they might have gotten a better deal doing it outside of a 1031, so they overpay. And I wonder if there's a lot of folks, are you seeing a lot of folks just jump in to creative financing just for the sake of wanting to do a creative finance deal?
I just want to talk a minute about the overpay part for a moment. And I want to hear about what this does down in y'all's neck of the wood, Andy and Sean. So I was on the phone with a gentleman. So first off, I do foreclosures in the Dallas area, the Tarrant County, which is Fort Worth, and other major cities around Texas for our investor clients. But when you go to these auctions, sometimes to buy houses also. And it's interesting that over in the Fort Worth area, at the foreclosure auction, houses are selling for 100 and 110 cents on the dollar. So you scratch your head and you go, what's going on? Something just doesn't, are people just trying to park money and they're willing to accept a 1 or 2 or 3% return on capital? Maybe. Talking to this fellow down in McAllen, and he brought it up and he went, I've been to the auction trying to find some deals, and it's like, what are they doing? All these exorbitant prices. And of course, I look at that and I'm going, you got the cartel here parking money and laundering it in some ways. I think in the Fort Worth area, you have the Asian marketplace and the cartel doing the same thing in some regard. I wonder in the Arizona, you don't have that in Ohio, but in Arizona, you all hear any of that kind of stuff down there?
I have.
Whether it's, in the Phoenix area or down further south or not?
No, I can't say that I have, other than properties, if the last foreclosure I did was on raw land and nobody cared about it. But for a property that was a single family residence and everything else, there was definitely a lot of interest. I got a lot of calls as the trustee, wanting to make sure it was going through. Um, there were, there was definitely demand for it, but whether there's that same kind of dynamic here, I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
seen.
I was just curious about that. But to your creative finance stuff, it's not the back end wraparound mortgages. It's the acquisition up front. You see so much, and it's an interest rate issue. Number one, I just helped a couple in San Antonio who needed to get out of their house and help their realtor understand that this was a great mechanism how to do it. And we just got the deal put together and wrapped up today, which is great, where it really did help the seller, help the agent, help everybody involved, told them how they're going to be protected along the way and those kind of things. And they were pretty happy with that. But the realtor was telling me that she gets probably 10 calls, 15 calls an hour from people interested in buying the house through creative techniques. And you just go, holy cow, and it just seems to be, I don't know what it is. It's a firestorm that seems to be out there just because of the market dynamics that we're in right now, possibly.
And I'm going to say this, and I do not mean to disparage the late Carlton Sheets in any way. I bought his course. He taught me some stuff back when I didn't know boo about real estate. But it seems as if creative financing is now the product that the late night infomercial Carlton Sheets programs would be selling. The no money down, bootstrap your way in, probably pay too much for the property, and so on. And it's a lot of people who, unfortunately, are not mentally and financially ready to invest in real estate, thinking that this is how they can get into the game. And I'm like, come on, guys, you need a little bit of money. You got to have a pocket for some reserves, because you're going to step in a pile of poo. You're just not going to know it until after you've stepped in it. And then you're going to have the money to fix it. And
They don't.
And they don't, Yeah.
Yep.
One area, just so we're talking about temperature of the market and everything, it's not directly related to creative finance, but one thing I have noticed, because I sit as statutory agent on a few commercial properties. So I'm not the owner, but we form the entity that owns it for the client, and so they have my name as the statutory agent, right? I have been in the last really the last couple months, and a lot just in the last month, inundated with cold calls from commercial real estate agents, sellers agents, believing that I own the commercial real estate, or hoping that I do, and looking to try to push a sale. They're looking for, inventory that they can represent and try to sell. But that has been in the last month. It just tells me that they're looking for properties to sell. The markets, and that's all commercial. Those are all commercial related properties. But I thought that was a really kind of telling indicator of the commercial market.
So along that line, in the residential space, what I'm seeing personally, what some of my clients are seeing, and I'm gonna probably make somebody mad when I say this, is I'm seeing data providers like PropStream selling such old, stale data that I get calls, I get text messages, I get letters regarding selling houses that I sold 2 and 3 years ago. And they still think I'm the owner of record. I had dinner last night with some wonderful clients of mine, used to be former neighbors. They own a bunch of stuff down in North Carolina. They live in Ohio. And because they are out of state landlords, because they have high equity, and because it's non or owner occupied, they get compiled in these lists and they just get pounded. And their kids get pounded because the skip tracing is so sloppy. And it's just like, come on, man. let's do this the right way. Let's not just make everybody offended and annoyed because you're using such crappy old methods. And and I'll just leave it at that.
Oh, I kind of have fun those when I get those phone calls and whatnot. It's like, well, what property are you calling about? And so who do you who are you calling for? What company? And who owns that company and where are they located? I'll run them down the line for a while. And of course, especially with these VAs out there, they can't answer the questions. And it's like, do you know who you're calling? And they don't.
They don't.
So I give them a little bit of a hard time, I have to admit. I get tired of the phone calls.
And here's where I struggle. Okay, I struggle. That VA is working for $3 to $5 an hour in the Philippines, and they're just trying to take care of their family. So I don't have an issue with them. They're just doing the job that some American that's too lazy to think about how to really streamline and focus their business is asking them to do. And so my issue is not with the VA. My issue is with the person who's buying the stale data. My issue is with the companies that sell the stale data. And when I say stale, I mean I sold those houses 3 years ago, and I'm still getting calls and text messages about them.
Well, mine's 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's just like your list. It's like, how old is your list?
Exactly. It is. But I know the companies that are doing this, and I shake my head over it, So anyhow,
I agree.
I'll leave it at that.
Well, guys, we've been going about an hour here. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I appreciate it.
What did we talk about today?
I don't know. It was a lot of old man venting. Honestly, that's. But you know what? I feel.
Well, Sean's over here in the corner asleep half the time.
Oh.
Well, he's old man venting and then old man napping. That's sometimes he needs his nap. All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for your time and looking forward to it again sometime.
All right. We've enjoyed it.
Vent
Thank you.
next time more often.
All right. Talk to you.
We'll see you guys.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you for listening. Peace.